from your eyes, what are you seeing that led to the results that happened last week?
Well, I just generally disappointed, right? Completely disappointed in the homestand that took place.
Brad Treliving breaks silence and shocks everyone during a critical moment in the season, as on January 29th, the Maple Leafs general manager addressed a winless homestand and a slipping playoff position while the team had just gone 0-1 at home, and his comments arrived as pressure around the organization increased.
But for me, the consistency level, or the level that we needed to be at. We weren't there for enough stretches and for long enough stretches, and the results, we got the results that we got. So certainly disappointing.
Brad Treliving spoke to media on January 29th, 2026, during a difficult stretch for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as the team had just finished a 5-game homestand without a single win. And the record during that span was 0 wins, 4 losses, and 1 overtime loss, which placed the Maple Leafs 8 points outside of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference after 53 games. During his comments, Treliving addressed the recent stretch without hesitation, as he said, "It has not been a good week, and it was not a good homestand," and his words were reported by Maple Leafs, Hot Stove, and carried across multiple hockey news outlets the same day. While the statement came as the team faced increasing pressure from its position in the standings and its on-ice performance. The homestand featured defensive breakdowns and consistent goals allowed at even strength, as according to reporting from the Leafs Nation, Toronto allowed more 5-on-5 goals than any other NHL team during that stretch of home games. And the defensive struggles occurred while the team was missing key players and rotating line combinations in search of results. At the time of Treliving's comments, the Maple Leafs had fallen 8 points behind the final playoff position, and the trade deadline was approaching in early March, as league standings data showed that Toronto needed a sustained winning run to re-enter postseason contention, and these facts framed the timing of the general manager's remarks. Treliving also spoke about how management evaluates a season during moments like this, as he said, "From a manager's perspective, you are looking at what happened before, what is happening now, and what is going to happen in the future," and the, quote, "reflected an internal review process that teams commonly apply when results do not match expectations." The Maple Leafs entered the season with playoff expectations, as earlier portions of the schedule showed stretches of competitive play. But January results reversed that trend, and the team's home record deteriorated quickly, while Scotiabank Arena, usually a source of points, became the site of repeated losses over 1 week. Head coach Craig Berube also spoke publicly on January 29th, as he acknowledged the standings position directly, and Berube said the team needed to dig ourselves out of it, while at the time Toronto had fewer games remaining than several teams ahead of them in the standings, and the margin for error had narrowed. Injury factors were present during the downturn, as William Nylander missed multiple games with a groin injury, and his absence removed one of the team's top scorers from the lineup. While line combinations were adjusted frequently, offensive output declined during the homestand. Despite the losses, Treliving did not announce roster moves or trade plans during his remarks, as he did not mention specific players or future transactions, and his comments focused on performance and accountability, while he said that immediate priority was the next game, and all you can focus on is tonight's game and moving forward. That statement came as the Maple Leafs prepared to leave Toronto for a road trip, and their next game was scheduled against the Seattle Kraken on January 30th, while the road stretch followed the unsuccessful homestand and represented an opportunity to change results away from home ice. Trade speculation increased across league coverage following the comments, as analysts noted that Toronto's position in the standings could affect its approach before the March 6th deadline, and some coverage discussed whether the team would buy, sell, or hold its roster, while Treliving did not confirm any direction during his media appearance. Craig Berube's comments echoed that approach, as he spoke about standings math and the need for improved execution, while no changes to coaching staff were announced and practice schedules continued as planned, while line combinations remained fluid based on availability. At the time, fan reaction across social platforms intensified, while public reaction varied, and the reporting itself remained centered on facts, as the Maple Leafs were 8 points out and the homestand was winless, while defensive metrics ranked near the bottom during that span. The organization's leadership presented a unified public message, as performance had not met expectations, and accountability applied at all levels, while the immediate focus remained on upcoming games and long-term decisions were not announced. Treliving's comments joined a larger body of reporting around the team's season trajectory, as analysts referenced the quotes when discussing trade deadline scenarios and playoff probability models, while no disciplinary actions reported and no internal conflicts were confirmed. The Maple Leaf situation at the end of January reflected measurable outcomes, as as wins were needed and points were required, while remaining games carried increased weight, and those conditions frame the significance of the general manager's public remarks. As January ended, Toronto prepared for the next phase of its schedule. While the standings gap remained unchanged at the time of publication, and the quotes from January 29th continued to circulate as a reference point for the team's state entering February, Brad Treliving's statements did not promise change, as they documented reality while the homestand record stood at 0 wins, and the playoff deficit stood at 8 points, and the next game awaited on the road.
I mean, I think that's got to be the main, point of focus each and every night. Like, we don't have to be the best team in the world every single night, but we need everybody to compete. We need everybody to just play good. Everybody just has to go out there and do their job and play good. And, just the consistency, that's been a big part of it.
Something changed inside the Maple Leafs room, and it didn't happen during the game. It happened after. One short statement from the captain. Calm words. Sharp meaning. Fans caught it instantly. Media replayed it again and again. The coach had just sent a message. Hours later, the captain answered, and what followed quietly shifted the conversation around this team. The moment came after practice. Not during a game. Auston Matthews stood in front of reporters as the Toronto Maple Leafs tried to reset after another difficult stretch. The team had struggled to close games. Defensive lapses had cost points. Pressure was building. Earlier, head coach Craig Berube had addressed the issue directly. He pointed to leadership. He said the team's leaders needed to take more control.
I thought we just made it really easy for them. The neutral zone was, a highway for them to get through, and I don't know, we just made it so easy for them, and they're obviously a skilled team, a lot of talent, a lot of speed, and I don't think we put enough stress on them on both sides of the puck.
That context mattered when Matthews spoke. Matthews did not raise his voice. He did not criticize teammates. He did not challenge the coaching staff. His words were measured. "We can all be better," Matthews said. He pointed to the last 2 games and called them frustrating. He added that responsibility would fall on the leaders and said he was fine with that. He stressed grinding, consistency, and sticking to what worked earlier in game. They came hours after Berube's blunt assessment following a loss, when the coach said the leaders had to take control more than they were. Berube's style has been direct since arriving in Toronto. He speaks plainly after losses. He places accountability where he believes it belongs. After recent results, that spotlight turned toward the leadership group. At the same time, Berube had been openly praising Matthews' on-ice play. Before a recent game, Berube said Matthews was driving play, creating chances, and playing with pace and determination. That praise was public. It was specific. It focused on effort and approach, not just scoring. This exchange happened during a stretch filled with major moments for Matthews. He had just returned from injury. Soon after, he broke the Maple Leafs' all-time goal-scoring record, passing Matt Sundin. He scored his 421st goal in fewer games than any player in franchise history. That achievement came during a loss, which kept the focus on team results rather than celebration. Inside that environment, Matthews' words took on extra meaning. The captain was not speaking as a player chasing milestones. He was speaking as the face of the team during a moment of scrutiny. His message echoed the coach's demand for urgency and detail. It reinforced accountability without pointing fingers. Fans noticed the timing. Analysts noted the alignment. The conversation shifted from systems and tactics to leadership and response. The reaction to Matthews' comments spread quickly because of what followed on the ice. In the games surrounding those statements, Matthews' role was clear. His minutes stayed heavy. His matchups stayed difficult. He took key defensive zone faceoffs. He remained on the ice late in close games. Those deployment choices reflected trust from the coaching staff. Craig Berube continued to speak about structure and pace in the days that followed. He did not walk back his earlier comments about leadership. He also did not single out any player. Instead, he repeated that the team needed consistent effort across all 3 periods. His public message remained steady. Matthews' leadership role extended beyond scoring. After returning from injury, he resumed his position on the top line and first power play unit. His ice time remained among the highest on the team. According to NHL game logs, Matthews averaged over 20 minutes per game during that stretch. Those minutes included penalty kill shifts and defensive zone start, areas that often reflect coaching trust. In the days following those remarks, media coverage centered on the connection between the captain and the coach. Analysts replayed both Berube's earlier comments and Matthews' response. The sequence became the story. First, the coach challenged the leaders. Then, the captain answered publicly. Berube continued to praise Matthews' pace and effort in later interviews. Matthews continued to emphasize team play when asked about individual achievements. After breaking the franchise goal record, he redirected attention back to results and consistency. The exchange between coach and captain did not resolve the Maple Leafs' challenges overnight. Wins and losses continued, but the messaging inside the organization became clearer. Accountability was shared, responsibility was acknowledged, expectations were stated publicly. And as the season moved forward, that short statement after practice remained one of the clearest signals yet of how leadership inside the Maple Leafs room was responding to pressure.
With Marty Bureau. Marty, here's an observation I've made. Nothing seems to come easy for this Maple Leafs team.
The Toronto Maple Leafs were not dealing with one bad night or one missing player. The problems were deeper. Defensive numbers told the story. Injuries added weight. Then the general manager broke his silence. He did not shift blame. He did not promise quick fixes. What he admitted placed the entire season under a harsher light.
We're not where we want to be or where we envision to be. Obviously, we've underperformed to this point, and I take full responsibility. I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself, and we start today and every day trying to get ourselves back up and going and improve where we are.
The focus moved sharply to Brad Treliving after the Toronto Maple Leafs continued to struggle through the early portion of the season. During a media availability, the general manager addressed the team's performance directly. He stated, "We've underperformed to this point." That statement placed responsibility at the top of the organization, not on individual players or coaching staff, and it marked one of the clearest acknowledgments from the front office this season. Treliving expanded on that position by stating, "I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself." The comment removed ambiguity about where accountability rests. At the time of those remarks, the Maple Leafs held an 8-9-2 record. They ranked second last in the Eastern Conference. The team had also allowed the second most goals per game in the league.
Brad Treliving, the general manager, had his media availability at about the quarter mark of the season, and things are not going well in Toronto right now when you look at the hockey club. And Noodles, one of the quotes that really stood out, there was a lot of great quotes that I want to talk about with you about Brad Treliving. One of them was, "There's too much vanilla with our hockey team right now." And when I think of Brad Treliving talking about we need a new DNA, and right now he's saying there's too much vanilla, I mean, this is a pretty significant message to the players.
Attention then shifted to the team's identity. Treliving described the Maple Leafs on-ice product as too much vanilla. The description pointed to inconsistency and a lack of complete performances rather than isolated mistakes. He also stated that the issues were not limited to specific players. Put anybody in the uniform and playing the way we're playing, we're probably going to have the same result. The general manager also addressed speculation around immediate roster changes. Treliving stated, "You're not trading your way out of problems." That remark signaled resistance to quick external fixes. Instead, he emphasized that improvement must come from within the existing group. At the same time, he publicly reaffirmed his support for head coach Craig Berube, stating, "Craig didn't become a bad coach overnight," and adding that he had all the faith in the world in him. These statements surfaced as injuries continued to impact the roster. Veteran defenseman Chris Tanev suffered a groin injury described in reports as potentially long-term. Other players dealt with lower body issues, further limiting lineup stability. With performance concerns already present, the injury situation increased attention on roster depth and long-term planning, and that pressure remained fixed on the general manager as the situation continued to develop. The situation intensified as external pressure met internal limitations. Reports published in early January indicated that roster planning had become more complicated due to injuries, particularly on defense. According to coverage summarized by Hockey Patrol, the Maple Leafs were forced to reassess trade deadline planning because of player availability and health concerns. Chris Tanev's groin injury was identified as a key factor, with the absence expected to last a significant period, further reducing defensive depth. At the same time, the general manager maintained his stance against reactive decision-making. His statement, "You're not trading your way out of problems," continued to shape public interpretation of the organization's direction. The message was clear: immediate transactions would not replace internal corrections. direction. This position stood even as external observers linked injuries and defensive struggles back to roster construction choices made before the season began. The pressure surrounding these comments increased because of timing. The Maple Leafs were not dealing with isolated losses. They were managing sustained inconsistency. According to the Hockey News, Treliving acknowledged the lack of complete games and noted that the team struggled to maintain structure over full 60-minute performances. These remarks aligned with his earlier description of the team's play as lacking edge and consistency. Despite the criticism, Treliving continued to place emphasis on unity within the organization. His support for head coach Craig Berube remained firm. Treliving rejected any suggestion that coaching instability was the source of the problem.
Yeah, good resilience tonight and character coming back, coming back the whole game, But we stuck with it, and I thought guys had good attitude and kept competing and doing good things, and ended up scoring some goals, which we needed.
The Maple Leafs fell behind again and again, yet refused to fade. When the final horn sounded, the scoreboard told one story. The coach told another. Craig Berube stood firm after the win, choosing his words carefully, sending a message that landed hard and changed the conversation heading forward. The Toronto Maple Leafs delivered one of their most turbulent wins of the season with a 6-5 comeback victory against the Winnipeg Jets. The game unfolded with constant momentum swings. Each time, the team responded with a goal. The result marked one of the highest scoring games of the season for the club. Auston Matthews led the charge. The Maple Leafs captain recorded a hat trick and added an assist. His third goal came late in the third period and stood as the game winner. According to the official game recap, Matthews finished the night with 4 points, directly factoring into more than half of Toronto's goals. His performance came after returning to the lineup following a brief injury absence. The game also featured a major goaltending change. Joseph Woll started the game for Toronto, but was pulled after allowing 4 goals. Dennis Hildeby entered in relief and stopped 22 of 23 shots. That change stabilized the game and allowed Toronto to stay within reach as the offense continued to press. Winnipeg contributed heavily to the chaos. Mark Scheifele scored twice and added an assist. Gabriel Velarde and Alexei Afalo also found the net. The Jets held leads at several points and entered the third period still within striking distance. However, Toronto's late push proved decisive. After the game, head coach Craig Berube addressed the media. His tone was firm. He focused on effort, response, and execution rather than mistakes. Good resilience and character coming back tonight, Berube said during his post-game availability. He later added, "I like the guy's attitude. Everyone kept going." Berube referenced how the team stayed engaged despite allowing goals. His comments centered on response rather than breakdown. He did not single out individual errors. Instead, he emphasized collective pushback after each deficit. Toronto improved its recent stretch with the victory, while Winnipeg's losing streak extended. The game ended with celebration on the ice, but the focus quickly shifted to the coach's message, which framed the night as something more than just a comeback win. The message from Craig Berube did not stop at resilience. His remarks also reflected how the Maple Leafs are choosing to play during this stretch of the season. Toronto has leaned into offense, even when games become unstable. Against Winnipeg, that approach was visible from the opening period through the final minutes of regulation. Berube acknowledged the reality of the game's structure. Goals were allowed. Momentum shifted, yet the bench response remained consistent. Players continued to attack. The coach did not frame the win around clean execution. Instead, he described persistence through repeated setbacks. His comments aligned with the numbers on the scoreboard rather than any single moment. Dennis Hildeby's role became more pronounced as the game progressed. After replacing Woll, he faced consistent pressure but allowed only 1 goal. His save percentage for the night finished above .950. The stabilization in net coincided with Toronto's ability to push forward without conceding another lead. Berube's comments did not reference external criticism directly. He spoke through the lens of performance. His emphasis remained on how the team reacted after after being tested repeatedly. The coach's language centered on attitude, pushback, and staying engaged. These were observable elements reflected in the flow of the game. The win also came during a period of increased scrutiny around Toronto's consistency. High-scoring games have defined recent results. Against Winnipeg, that pattern continued. The Maple Leafs scored 6 goals for the second time in a week. Over their last 5 games, their goal total reached 25, confirming the offensive surge. Winnipeg's situation added context. The Jets entered the game on a losing streak that extended further with this result. Despite strong individual performances, they were unable to hold multiple leads. Toronto capitalized on each opening created. As the media session concluded, Berub's remarks framed the night around response rather than control. The scoreboard confirmed the comeback. The quotes confirmed the stance. The result stood, but the message carried beyond the final horn.
Circle back on Rasmus Anderson as the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know the Leafs